Welcome, everyone. My name is Paul Beyer. I am a leader on the emerging group called ChatGPT. We're having a lot of fun. People are popping in that popcorn now. So really excited. We're starting to get ourselves a little more organized. So we're really pushing to have, based on everyone's feedback, 1 to 2, we call them showcases or kind of working demos and discussion items. So keep sending the feedback on what type of stuff you're looking for. And tonight we've got Lucinda and Adam. Lucinda's in the Boston area. Adam's calling again from Australia. He's called in a few times, so we're excited about that. Hang on here. I always move the waiting room icon and I can't let him in. Just a quick, for the people who knew, I'll go through this quickly. We're advisory group. We're really focused on practical issues, half business, half technical. Our centerpiece really is this learning lab. We continue the great feedback, and particularly we get a lot of feedback on people who come back repeated times because everyone's fighting up this this learning curve. We author a newsletter. Got some use cases we share, workshops. I think most people know all this stuff here. And we really believe in community. I think one of the things I personally strongly believe that there's real value in this kind of synchronous communication where we're collectively learning up in the cloud or together. And I really value kind of seeing someone present and then some of the chat going back and forth between technical business and business and technical. So I think that's at least a contribution we can make to as we're fighting up the learning curve in this industry. We got a bunch of testimonials on how people are using it. We're getting much better at posting this. We'll get this one posted certainly within 2 days, maybe within 1 day, and some great feedback on that. We have a free networking thing we call AI Woodstock. We have one in New York City at Time Out Market, New York City. It's 6 o'clock on June 7th. I'm very excited about that. It'll be our first one down there, and our third one in Boston will be the 21st in Boston. So if you want to have one in your area, let me know. We can get you a free logo. For people who haven't seen this, there's so many great tools and coming out. This one in particular, I really find transformative. I'm going to try to play. I know it really plays badly, but it's really short. So let me just play it and then we can explain it. So this is for dubbing over movies. So this is a new way for movie studios who would make a movie in English and then want to have it to go to Spanish audiences. They'd have to hire a Spanish actor, try to get the lips. And it's always been a horrifically bad experience. And this is a fabulous example of how generative AI is transforming this part of the movie industry. So you're going to see a video clip here of her doing it in English. And I think the next one is they take out the curse words and they put in a few other languages. It's going to be very choppy, so look at the URL. I'll send it out later.
Now we're stuck on this stupid tower in the middle of nowhere, and I don't blame you. And now we're stuck on this stupid freaking tower in the middle of freaking nowhere, and it's all my fault. Que vecesしてるよね? 仕方ないよ. Y es todo por mi culpa. Now we're stuck on this stupid.
So what's important there, and we go back to the slides here. What's important there is a couple different things. One, you saw that they're obviously putting in the voice, which is important. And now with this, all this great stuff, you can easily get local dialect that people will do. You can also take different pieces out. You saw them take the curse word out and put less curse words in there. And then third thing, they're moving the lips around to make it sync. Apparently, a lot of studies have shown that the lips are a little off. It really jars the viewer here. And the important thing about this, it's opened up huge revenue streams. So I think there's tens of thousands of movies that are English only. Now you can go back and release every single one of them in 15, 20, 100 different languages and vice versa here. So at a fraction of the cost. And this is one of many, many things out there where the generative AI is transforming a product or service delivery at wildly new capabilities and wildly lower cost and wildly faster, in addition to making a lot of cost savings. I just want to highlight this is, I mean, I think people coming back here know this, but I went through this myself, and I continue to see that individuals, teams, and companies all go through this. You know, you aren't aware, you're kind of aware. It's I call it an intellectual vertigo. You're a little jarring. You what do you mean to create that fat? And you slowly, walk up. I've been giving, probably 5 or 6 presentations now a week to either investors or management teams or executives, and it's so clear to me where folks are along this dimension. And executives who are really serious about this for company, I tell them how critically it's important for them personally to start moving up, because it's going to help them guide. And then for the teams, I had I don't know if Jeff's on here, had a fantastic call today with Mike is CMO. I don't know if he's on, Mike CMO. And, he's one of the real visionaries. He's executive at a large company here, CMO. He's personally used it multiple times. He sees how it fits in his organization. And he's actively figuring out how to get it up there. So it's like swimming, takes a while. You got to have repeated coaching, learning, sharing to get up the model here. And that's why we're really kind of see a learn, do, show model, kind of 3 steps. And we really encourage for companies who are serious about this, is to get serious about your internal learning initiatives. Maybe create your own lab or create your own enthusiast to step forward to start working up this curve, because it's absolutely critical. You can't jumpstart someone becoming an Olympic swimmer, and you can't jumpstart a person, a team, or a company to become proficient in an AI-based organization. I'll skip through this, but people who don't know the basics, let me know. We can get other hands, but high-level things, trillion words, basic AI model, a whole bunch of generative AI technologies, a safety and trust and safety layer with all the rules, and it's out in browsers and apps. One of the things we're getting a lot of requests for, we're probably going to do it next week because we won't have time, to start showing and talking through open ChatGPT plugins, which are a great way. They're starting to roll out of the beta. And there's also ChatGPT, which is ChatGPT and code interpreter, which you've seen those. I think great. That allows you to upload a sophisticated Excel spreadsheet and don't tell anything about it, and it'll go analyze it for you. Then you can go back and query it. So it actually really gives everybody a sense for what's coming around the bend, from the transformative use cases we hear to even more transformative with some of these tools. But we won't focus on that yet tonight. We are certainly getting pulled into things beyond just ChatGPT, but this is important for everyone. 1,000 interns at your fingertips. It's still human in the loop. This 1,000 interns very quickly bring the raw material to the or the clay to the table, and the humans take it the last mile. So they bring up the 3 different versions to your resume or your proposal or critiquing your investment decision, and then you add the final last yard or red zone, and we see that again and again. So let me stop and turn it over to Lucinda. So Lucinda, thank you for sharing. Why don't you introduce yourself and the context, and teach away.
All righty. I'm going to, if I can do a screen share, that'll be great.
Can't you do it now?
I'll try it right now. Great.
Yep. We can see it.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Lucinda Lindy. I'm a senior data scientist at Ironside. And I was going to the Open Data Science Conference, which I think I'd mentioned in a previous meeting here. One of the things they did have was a hackathon, and I thought that this would be a good way for me to very quickly learn, and I think very much in the community that you're talking about, Paul, to learn a little bit about generative AI and how to use it, because if everybody's just using ChatGPT, then we're all in the same playing field. And where the difference can lie is if you are taking your own data and putting it in and adding it, much as Elizabeth did last week, to what all the other information that's out there, then how can that turn into a competitive advantage? So I wanted to get some hands-on experience. I thought if I go to a hackathon, at least I'll be forced to code and meet with other people and get focused on one specific use case. So I was very lucky to have somebody just go into the Teams chat who said, like, hey, I'm looking for a team. I've got data set and a use case. And I'm like, okay, That's the guy I want. So I said, great, come on our team. And there were some other people already there. His use case was for preventing medication errors. And Weaviate and ODSC were the sponsors of the hackathon. So we made sure to use Weaviate vectorization software. And the idea here is to use it to cut through the complexity of drugs that people are using, the patient condition, and pharmacogenetics, which is basically what genetics that you have, do you have that may have you metabolize drugs in an unusual way. And so these are the team members. Mark Gunnels is the guy with the use case and the data sets. So it was really great. So here's an example that he brought that he was particularly haunted by. There was a death reported in a nursing infant who was exposed to high levels of morphine and breast milk because the mother was a ultra high metabolizer of codeine, which meant that basically the codeine was metabolized very quickly and went right to the infant and unfortunately caused the infant to die. And here everybody was doing the right thing. The mother was nursing her baby. The hospital had given her the drug that was for killing pain from childbirth, and it was proper for her weight and everything and all her other medical conditions, except for the fact that she was a high metabolizer. So how can this be prevented? Well, each year, 7,000 to 9,000 people, U.S. patients die of medication errors. And there's two problems. One is that there's too much to know. Literally, you've got 19,000 prescriptions. You've got all the complexities of how that intersects with a patient's condition from anybody who's on dialysis or has diabetes or any of the pharmacogenetic things we were just talking about. So the question is, how can you scale reasoning through these reams of drug data as it applies to complex patient data? The other thing is that there's not enough medical practitioners. Many of them left during COVID from burnout. So it's a really tough problem to solve. So if we look at the medication errors, you've got the kind of drug, and supplement interactions. You've got drug interactions with patient conditions. And then we're just focused on a very focused use case here, pharmacogenetic interactions. And it's because some medication errors involve patients who metabolize drugs differently. But it can also be difficult for doctors to keep up on whatever the latest research is and how it changes the FDA guidelines. So the question is how to kind of parse this. So the solution here that we came up with was to use Weaviate and OpenAI, and another one called LangChain, which we're going to be hearing about more, which I'm actually glad about, to make better pharmacogenetic recommendations to help doctors choose the right medication and to avoid situations where something may not be, may not be good for the patient. And we can use this to make the most relevant recommendations. So very briefly, the doctor enters the patient record into the system. The record is used to generate an embedding. The system will perform a generative search against the database and return a relevant recommendation. And the large language model is used to supply that personalized recommendation. So here, this is kind of the flow. We used Weaviate for both the patient data and the FDA drug data. We put it into a combination of OpenAI and LangChain to perform search and reasoning. And then we put these two inputs, the patient info and the data from the drug guidelines, through this processing through Streamlit, which is an app type of interface, so you can nicely type in what the conditions are, and it will come out and nicely print out a personalized recommendation. So here's an example of that. So the input is patient is ultra rapid metabolizer. Okay, and so that kind of begs the question of, okay, how do you know that? You may know that from the patient data, but you also may not know that, and you may actually have to go get a test. And the patient is on tramadol, which is that type of medication. So what the program does is it checks if the medication in question is tramadol, because there are a lot of different brand names. Check if that gene has been tested for, and if the the individual has a gene of ultra rapid or actually poor metabolizer, then it recommends an alternative non-codeine analgesic like NSAID, like an Advil or ibuprofen or Tylenol. So the thing that's interesting here is that the program basically creates an intermediate output, which is the checklist. And the checklist kind of looks at the implicit structure of the FDA guidelines and comes up with a multi-step checklist. Then that checklist is then reapplied to the OpenAI for a more efficient and flexible recommendation based on the patient data. So it's kind of like almost a double turn through the drug information. So the output for this would be the medication is indeed tramadol. The question is this CYP gene, and this patient is an ultra-wide metabolizer. Therefore, I recommend alternative non-codeine analgesics for this patient. Some options are NSAIDs like ibuprofen, or naproxen, or acetaminophen, Tylenol. It's important to keep an eye on the patient as well. So that's the final output. Just briefly, any questions on this at all? Because this is kind of the heart of it. Okay.
Well, that's actually one question. Mike, do you have a question?
Yeah, I did. So this is great, Lucinda. I like this. I'm curious. Well, I guess because it was a hackathon, I guess maybe there's less rigor. But
yeah.
Hypothetically, in real life, you would have to document and be able to audit this a month or a week or a day later. What did you give them? And you can't just say, well, I don't know, it's whatever, the machine told me.
Right. All right. So this hackathon wasn't even an overnight hackathon. So I didn't even have to pull an all-nighter. We started, I think our team met at 7:30 in the morning. We had to turn in our coding by 3:30, 4 o'clock. And then the judging was at like 5 o'clock. So, so this was just meant to say, here's how you can map all this stuff. Obviously, with any application, you've got an incredibly complex, data chain going in to make sure all this stuff is right. And you've got an incredibly complex data chain going out, especially in a regulated industry like medicine.
Lucinda, Bob's got a question as well.
Yep.
Go ahead, Bob. Bob, you're mute, I think. Thanks everyone for raising hands. It makes it, we got 60 or 80 on here, so it makes it very helpful.
Lucinda, great job. If you don't mind backing up to the Weaviate slide, I've got a couple questions. There you go. Could you walk through this slowly? And what I mean by that, what's the format of the patient data? How does it get entered into the Weaviate? Any challenges there? It shows that it goes into patient vectors. Is it really that simple? And then what's taking place on the right-hand side? When you say going into OpenAI, are you literally throwing into some OpenAI large language, public language model, or your own private model? And then I have a question on the following slide, but if you could kind of start there.
So we used Weaviate to vectorize. So when you want to, look at your data and have it be applicable to an like OpenAI or another large language model, those large language models take each word and they make an embedding, right? And the embedding is a whole bunch of information on that word and that context. And, just like, stock can be used to stock somebody, or it could be the stock of a plant, right? Then they're just all these embeddings with lots of encoding in it. So you're just going to take your data and make it have embeddings that are, similar to, or, copacetic to what's in a language model. So that gives you so you need to make a transformation to make it kind of part of the data of the that OpenAI can run over. So, and the other thing is, I just looked this up today because I was wondering, first of all, we used the Mimic 4 database, which you can look up. The links are right here. I'm not going to switch back and forth right now. It'll take too much time. And then the FDA guidelines are here. So they're complex. They've got all this information. They've got, it was basically ER data. And what we did was to make it extremely simple, given we only had like 6-8 hours to work on the project. We just said, what Weaviate does is it allows you to determine what the structure is. So it said, like for here, we wanted to know, we just had like a couple of pieces of information from the patient, and we used the tramadol guidelines, and it went in and it looked at the tramadol guideline. It got an implicit, kind of checklist of what you should do. And that checklist was different with different drugs, and it was different with different patients. So, and then you put it through OpenAI to get that language and LangChain to get the logic and the checklist. And then you say, using LangChain, you say, okay, like, you know how you engineer your own prompts and you start to get really specific about the wording? You are a highly knowledgeable doctor who can understand all of these interactions. You don't make things up. And then it fills in the things from that particular patient record into the request. And so it's a way to computationally do your prompt engineering, but based on the structure that it's picked up on that particular FDA guideline or that particular patient. So that's
great. And Lucinda, just to clarify, also, I think someone asked, this is using OpenAI as the large language model. You're not using an open source.
So I'm using OpenAI GPT 3.5 Turbo. Yeah. And so from what the website said, if you go through the API, it will not use your data for training unless you specifically allow it.
Yeah.
That's one good thing.
I want to just keep moving in terms of time. We've got 3 or 4 other hands up. Carlos, thank you, Bob. Carlos, you want to be next? And then Yuri, we'll go next after you.
Sure. I have another related question on the Weaviate and the vector embeddings, if that's okay. So I understand your explanation was really helpful about stock and all the different definitions and the semantics of that word. Is it is an approach like this, would it run into problems with drug names and chemical compounds, or maybe with coding? If you wanted to do a semantic embeddings of a large list of example Python code or something, and then do a search, is this the approach you would use? And I don't know, from a data scientist perspective, I'd love to hear your opinion.
So for drug names and stuff, I think there are probably enough cross references in the drug guidelines that it can pick it up. That, like, I think that's well within large language models' ability to know that Advil is an NSAID and just make all those connections. In terms of code, I don't know. I mean, I've only used ChatGPT with code, like just slap in some code, like, where's my mistake? Or here's the code and here's the error, how do I fix it? So I haven't done anything super complicated with code. And I especially have not, done the program to deal with that.
Great. Thank you. Yuri, you want to go next? And then we'll go to Tim.
Perfect. Thank you. This is a really amazing use case, and I've seen sort of machine learning versions of this, or they claim actually the more kind of curated versions, manually curated, and the fact that you could do this in an afternoon, and a company has been doing it for years is really remarkable. Sorry, I'll try to speed this up. So I was curious, there's so much complexity in a patient record vis-a-vis the drug data that you have to look at. Did you just take that entire patient record and throw it in and create one embedding and use that as your vector, or did you split it up into many different separate aspects, and did you group it maybe by medications versus other things? How many I guess the question is how many embeddings?
Yeah, I mean, for this one, we just did one embedding, and it was just the it's just a few pieces of information. Obviously, for a real patient system, it would be more complex, and it might be multiple embeddings,
Mm-hmm. So did you take like a fire record of the patient, or was it just somebody's notes on the patient?
Well, no, it was a record. So the Mimic-4 is actually ER patients who were treated in an ICU. So there is detailed data on the patients. You can look at the Mimic-4 and see what the extent of the information is. But I think we were pretty narrow in terms of what we picked out. Definitely for the FDA guidelines, you could have made a ton of different things to pull out. We, I think, had it like, I don't know, 10 or 13 things. So.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Great, thanks. We'll do two more. Go ahead, Tim.
Yes, hi. So I have enough knowledge of this area to be dangerous. I'm interested, so this is interesting and sounds great. And I've seen a couple of examples like this, but I also know virtually every system in every hospital and doctor's office has this capability generally built into it, at least it's supposed to. And I've seen it works certainly on most of the general stuff. And so I'm sort of interested in, did you compare it to just like doing a Google search, or the systems that are already in place that already have drug interaction automatic checking built into them?
So I did a tiny little search on, well, yeah, because aren't drug-to-drug interactions what you're supposed to be knowing about anyway?
Right.
And so yes, you can do that. However, I don't believe that they include what the patient condition is. Again, this was an extremely short search. Yeah, I don't believe.
That's true, but they should include genetics. They should, yeah, they don't include, but they always include all the drugs, and they should include genetics in general, which is.
It's about just information overload. It's about sorting through those FDA guidelines, and also looking at the papers of the newest, information that came out, synthesizing all that. I mean, this is the summarization part that the large language models are good at. So, I mean, could a doctor do it better? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, if they had the time. Do you have enough doctors? Do you have people that are frazzled, that are that don't know enough, that are still making these decisions anyway?
Yeah, the question, I guess, in clinical practice is, do the systems already, systems already in place should get this. They really should. Because as soon as they prescribe the tramadol, it should say, oops, don't do that with this person's genetic profile. But they may not, I don't know, because the genetics is newer stuff. But the other thing is the doctor has to stop and do this. Somebody's got to put this stuff into ChatGPT. It's not free, it's not instant, right? So the doctors are still overwhelmed running around in an emergency room, I can tell you that. But I appreciate this, that's really another topic.
I mean, the purpose of this was to really automate it, right? So that you just say, here's the information, here are the drugs, boom, right? So.
Yep. And it's good, I will say, it's good at finding very obscure things. This one isn't quite so obscure, but Eric Topol had a great example of somebody who saved their husband's life because they were being diagnosed with long COVID, but they just happened to have this very obscure problem that had like 5 different components you had to recognize, and ChatGPT recognized it and the doctors didn't. So for that kind of super obscure stuff, the breadth of the language model is really useful.
Right, let's keep driving. So thank you, Tim. Aaron, we'll do your last question, and Linda, if you could just wrap up. So go ahead, Aaron.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the great work that you've done here. It'd be interesting to see if you are going to build on this, the other APIs that are out there, because as someone was pointing out, how would you control for the workflow? And there's basically robotic pharmaceutical dispensary systems, and they all have pretty modern APIs. So they're the robotic APIs, but they basically look at them as like drawers. So that could be a way to, kind of the human in the loop, but then also like the double check, right? So it'd be interesting, even if you virtualize that as a step, a robotic step, that could be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that, I think Paul had this one quote where it's like, this is meant to be your co-pilot and not your autopilot. And also, again, in my job, this isn't my application. It was one of my teammates, and he worked for Tabula Rasa, which I think is a medical information company. So he might go ahead and do something with this, but for me personally, no. But then in terms of future work, you could do a more detailed workflow, as you talked about, or you could apply this approach to other patient conditions and drug-drug interactions. So that's basically the wrap up.
Well, wonderful. Well, great job, Lucinda. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
One last question now. So you found a team of 3 or 4 this one-day hackathon. As you guys were going into this, where was the technical feasibility risk? Was it, oh, we think we could probably do this and we just got to do it? Or I don't know, it's a coin toss. If we actually get this done, this would actually be useful. Where on the confidence did you guys start the day?
Well, I mean, I didn't know whether we'd get anything done or any of that. Mark, my teammate, was really diligent on it. I mean, he knew exactly what he wanted, and that's really huge, to not have to spend time to figure that out at a hackathon.
Yeah.
So, and also he was a pretty good coder too.
So you had a real precise kind of use case going in.
Exactly, and he knew exactly what he wanted out of the information and how to use it. So that was extremely helpful to have that, SME, subject matter expert knowledge, going in, how to use it. And he had to actually innovate a whole bunch of things along the way. So yeah, it was
Great job. So requirements still count, content's still important. So let's switch over to Adam. Adam, you want to introduce yourself and kick us off?
Mic check.
Yep, we can hear you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. I'm already sweating the time. I'd like to invite you all to really dial in, because I'm going to dig into some technical stuff here and get under the hood. Thank you, Lucinda. That was really great, and I think in many ways it's almost a testament to Paul's genius. The way sort of sorry, Me's on a call. I thought he was talking. I see him in the background there. It dovetails well, because what I'm going to be showcasing is a little bit under the hood of what you were talking about there in terms of using LangChain. So I'll share my screen. Can you all see that?
We can see it.
In my browser?
We can see it.
Super. I'm going to close that. I'll apologize. I don't have a slide deck. If you see this submission countdown, I'm currently in a 5-day hackathon, and we're in our last day of it at the moment. So we're doing some pretty cool stuff. I won't go into it too much, but maybe next week I'll share the outcome of it. But we're taking a 2D crawler game that was on the blockchain, and we're actually integrating GPT into it through the API, so that now it actually becomes sort of an endless quest game where you can interact with these characters, and then it'll pop up a little screen, and you can chat with GPT and have an encounter, like a friendly person or a monster and that kind of stuff. But so just as an aside, that's why I'm not better prepared. But nonetheless, I'm Adam, also known as Mentis from Atman Academy. This is just a little bit about Atman Academy, my website. Right here, you can sign up if you want a GPT cheat sheet, and that will actually take you to my Twitter. So you can sign up for that. I've done 100 days of ChatGPT, tweeting out every day on a thread and telling my stories. And here I am on LinkedIn. So depending on which way you want to find me, you can find me on both. I want to show now on the Atman website, it's not linked, but I've made this page called Showcase, which is just a little bot where you can chat with my LinkedIn profile. So on LinkedIn, as I think most of you probably know, but I was surprised how many don't, if you actually scroll down the page as I've done, this More button gives you an option to save a PDF of your profile. So all I did is I took a copy of that and I trained it in a similar way as Lucinda has, using LangChain to communicate with GPT, and then Pinecone in my case for the database where I put my my CV or resume, as you North Americans still call it. And then you can actually chat with it. So you can say, where Adam first worked. And it's a little slow because it is GPT-4, but I wanted to make sure my API was working. So I think a lot of people.
You froze.
Pacific Ocean.
Have seen this kind of thing right now. So what I thought would be my check.
Excuse me, Adam. Sorry to interrupt, but you froze. We missed your last paragraph.
mic check. Am I back?
You're back now, yeah.
All right, thanks. So we've many of us have seen tools like this by now where it's customized on a PDF. In fact, now with the plugins, you can just chat with GPT on a PDF. But mind you, I made this a good 3-4 weeks ago now, and the space moves so fast. So as it says, I first worked at Jandel Scientific. So great, we know it's working. So let's in this case, you see it's on my webpage. So first I want to talk about a little trick, because if you see, here's actually in the code from this web page, you can see that I'm just using this thing called an iframe. And this is a good little trick if you just want to put something on a web page, but it's actually somewhere else on the internet. So if I come over here, you see this URL is on .run.app or wherever. I can actually then use this little bit of code and say, just embed this website in my other website. And then boom, it looks like on my Atman Academy webpage, I have this chatbot built right in. So just so people understand, I thought I'd highlight that you can absolutely have a tool built or work with someone to create some custom web page and then basically like put a white label over it and have it look like someone else's website. And that's just sort of part of my flow. So I thought I'd share that. But you can see this is actually the same chatbot, that same URL. What's actually going on under the hood is this kind gentleman, they refer to him as Mayo, who's a bit of a legend in terms of the open source community on GitHub. GitHub is a content repository mostly used by developers. Paul, if people have questions on the chat or raising their hand, can you let me know, please?
Sure, there's a couple of them. Is there a link to the site you can share, share afterwards?
Yeah, I'm going to share links to Atman Academy and my Twitter and LinkedIn and all that stuff after, as well as the chatbot there.
Yeah, I'm on the chat. Go ahead, stay informed. Yeah,
thank you. So what's going on under the hood is I had heard, you can see even the name of this file or this directory is GPT-4 PDF chatbot LangChain. And that's exactly what it is. It's a whole directory of code that can build what I was just showing you. He has a nice README here, which includes tutorial videos and a Discord, a very helpful community. You can reach out to me as well. But these step-by-step directions, actually, I was having a little trouble with them. So what I did is I went out to his tutorial video, which is here. This is just another good tip for everyone. On most YouTube videos now, at these 3 dots, there's an option to show the transcript. So I showed the transcript, and I literally just copied this whole thing. I went over to ChatGPT, and I said, here's a transcript. I'm going to give it to you and then ask you questions about it. There's now a plugin, so you can actually just send it the URL of the YouTube, and it can do this for you. But again, this was a few weeks ago. So I thought it would be interesting to use ChatGPT to actually get some more instruction on how to put this thing together. So first I fed it that transcript, so I didn't have to watch it. It was too long, so I had to end it. You see in my initial instruction, I actually said, given the size, is that big enough? I'll make it a little bigger. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we can see it, yeah.
Given the size, I'll send it in 2 parts. After receiving this input, just respond, thank you, more please, and I'll send you the second half. So that's just a little trick I do. And you can see then I didn't finish.
Actually, Adam, can you hover on that? There's a lot of confusion in that. So when you do that, does it, even though it's 2 prompts, the question is, does it remember? Does it put them together?
Oh yeah, no, its working memory is much larger than the context window.
Oh yeah.
So the information it has about what it's been discussing with you in a conversation is a much larger body of context than how much text you can fit in one message. So when I do this, right, and I say, here's the first part, and I give it all this text, when it says, thank you, more please, which is what I told it to say, and then I give it this second half, it still has all of that context and data that I fed it before.
Thank you.
It hasn't forgotten per se or lost it from its working memory. So then it says, oh, it sounds like you've described a tutorial, but when I question it, it's going to remember things from the beginning of the tutorial as well, not just that second input. Is that what you were asking there, Paul?
It was. Thank you for clarifying that.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, you're welcome. So then I went on and I said, here's the README from the GitHub. So then I took this thing as well, and I just copy pasted that in. And I was like, man, I'm just going to give it all this info. Then it just came right back. Oh, actually, I might have told it. Let's see. Nope, I just said, here's the README. And it actually came back automatically at that point and said, here's a quick step-by-step guide based on the README. Now, it was also taking that other information into context. But so between the combination of those, I was able to step through and get this thing working. I actually thought I might go through and do the whole demo of installing it, but I think that's probably too much for today. So I will just show you, here's like where you start, where I have nothing. You know, there's just my files in a directory ready to start. This is Visual Studio, which is like a local development client. And you just literally, you say, you know, clone or download the zip file. And over here, you can actually see there's an option, you know, to clone or download the zip file. So you can actually navigate through this stuff. Like, I didn't actually code anything to get this solution working. When it gets to the point where it says, you know, replace this with your desired values or something. I have a working example over here that's all finished, but you know, you're literally just going into files. I mean, you could do it with the text editor as well, and changing the text. And similar to what Lucinda was doing, I'll show you here. When I actually have the conversation, so this is now looking under the hood, it says make chain. So this is the communication, how we use LangChain to talk to ChatGPT. So this is the part I really wanted to highlight. So you can see we have a constant QA prompt. So this is the thing that gets sent to ChatGPT every time when we interact with it. So I say you're a helpful assistant, an expert in all fields. I will give you some more context, and then I will follow up with a question. Load relevant information, but all of this gets fed to GPT so that when the user's sitting here, right, on this screen, they don't actually have to tell GPT all of that, but it'll still understand what to do when they just type, where did Adam first work? So what I'm doing here is I'm feeding it sort of this preamble. The actual term is now, they call it a system prompt. And that's the information outside of the actual data coming through from the user. So then there's the context, and then there's the question. So the follow-up input is the question. In my case, this would be, where did Adam first work? So it's going to take this prompt up front, any chat history, and then the question, and then it's going to actually return the answer. That's a bit of a simplification, but it gives you a sense of how this is actually working, how it's building the code to take sort of take that instruction set out of the user's hand, so that someone can come here and just say, where did Adam first work? But GPT will still understand and get on the back end what it needs to know that we're talking about this PDF, you know, that's in this flow. We're going to give you this history, this context, etc. So I'll just pause there for a second to make sure that that at least makes sense.
Yeah, what other questions do we have, folks have? Go ahead, Bob. Bob, you're on mute, I think.
Just unmuted, thank you. Fabulous, Adam. I look forward to listening to the recording later at slower speed. Question for you with regard to the window kept in memory, you know, the vectors. Is that a rolling window? So my understanding, and it's pretty limited, you have your prompt, then you have a response, then you have a follow-on prompt and so forth. Does it continue literally so that things fall off the ladder, whether it's 4K or 8K?
That's my experience. I don't know exactly how it works. Is my best answer. I've used ChatGPT to make a like content management system, and I was giving it content like what's a blockchain, what's a Bitcoin, what's an NFT, and it was creating 6 fun facts for each, as well as a multiple choice quiz. And as I got further down, I started noticing that it couldn't remember the fun facts from the first. Remember, I'll use that in quotes, but it no longer had the data from the oldest content that I had it produce. So I think it is first in, first out, and that it starts to lose the oldest context first, but I don't know how big that is or how that even works under the hood. the context window is how much text you can input at one time, like copy and paste in through the chat.
Mhm.
Good.
Thank you.
Go
I
ahead,
mean,
Mike.
I've had very long conversations with ChatGPT, and I find that you can just keep adding data. I mean, I was trying to do something for site selection for car washes and stuff, and you can just keep adding more data and, you know, add to this to it, just like you did. And it's actually amazing. And you can even refer back to a previous part of the conversation and say, hey, back when I made that list, what am I missing?
That's great. Go ahead,
Um,
Mike. We'll do Mike, and then we have two online that I'll read out. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay,
Yeah, thanks.
I hadn't
So this
even
is great,
finished,
Adam.
but
This is,
I'll finish there. I guess what I'll say that I didn't get to do is, no, that's all right. Yeah, Paul, I could have. I just wanted to show you Pinecone.
Yeah, that was one of the questions. Where's Pinecone in this?
Yeah, so this is Pinecone is online and you just log into it. I have an account. You can make an index. I made one called LangChain, and here's like it tells me where it is. And you see it has 8 vectors in it. So this is my profile from LinkedIn obviously isn't very big. But you can see here under my docs in the directory where I have all this code, that's where I have that PDF file that it trained on.
And
then,
excuse me, Adam, can you explain for some of the what is a vector? How should a non-technical people think of a vector is?
Vector is basically math that tells where something is and how much weighting it has in a direction. That's if that's not still too complicated. It basically it's what converts the words into math, so the computer can interpret the relationships.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, but so here's Pinecone and here's this database, and what I was going to demo, and maybe we'll do it another time, is I was just going to delete this and train GPT on a different PDF to just show people that process. So Paul, maybe we put a pin in it and do it to be continued. But I'm just aware of the time, and that would take another probably 5 to 10 minutes. But yeah, so from LangChain though, you get an API key. So an API key just lets some other piece of code use my account and interact with it. So you get an API key from Pinecone, and similarly from OpenAI, you have API keys. So I go to Pinecone and I get my key, and I go to OpenAI and I get my key, and then I can actually, in my code, I can provide all that information, right? So that then when my conversation needs to go interact with OpenAI, or it needs to go interact with Pinecone, those tools know that I actually have authorized access. So that's also a little bit about what's an API and how is that used to connect all these things. Probably stop there.
Yeah.
I think 5 till.
Thank you, Adam. Let's open up the questions. Good. Mike, go ahead. Mike.
yeah, thanks. So this is great, Adam. I do want to follow up with you. So did I hear you correctly that you used blockchain somehow on this, or is that something else?
No, that's another hackathon that I've got 16 hours left on.
Okay. I'll follow up with you. Thank you very much.
So
yeah, sure.
Adam, one of the questions I hear a lot from companies are they want to use their own data, but they also are concerned that it's hallucinates or someone puts it in a correct thing, so they want to put their own rules in. Can you that prefix you were calling in Lang, can you continue to put rules if someone uses a curse word?
Oh yeah, so imagine this project I'm working on now with the blockchain, but a user's going to be able to start by describing a world, and we're going to use that same sort of interface of getting system text and then sending prompts to generate a world description, to create all of the characters in the world, to give them all backstories. And then when the character interacts with the user, it's going to be told to create a challenge to help them overcome that obstacle, but assess their performance on it and give them a score. And all of that's being done just through the same format of saying, you're going to get some text, but here's all the context about what you need to consider and what are the rules. And we even have rules like when the person's first entering the world description, they have to give like a description of the world and invite like 3 things. And it does error handling. So if they only give 1 of the 3 or 2 of the 3, it'll just respond and say, sorry, you have to give me all 3 of these things. And it just so you can do little for loops based on their inputs. But if you're getting into all that, I can't recall who it was who introduced me to VoiceFlow off of your group here, Paul. But VoiceFlow is a phenomenal way to approach all of that logic around what are the interactions, what are we waiting for, what are the system prompts, and to be able to visually set that up and design it. So if you're getting to that point, look at VoiceFlow or look to me, or please do call out whoever it was on this again who turned me on to that. I can't recall. Apologies.
We'll do one more question and wrap up. Go ahead, Venkata.
Yeah, hi Adam. I do have a quick question. So when you're actually like after building, you put some app into the JavaScript code, right? To look into the front page or the view. What is that one? I was just curious.
The app for the front end?
Yeah. Like what is that app and where did you,
It's literally just the code I downloaded from his repository. I will actually, when I share all the links at the end, I'll share the link to his GitHub depot. So if anyone else wants to go see this thing and go look at that README and start trying to do it for themselves, they can do that. But you'll see it in there. It's using Node, so it's just basically a web page.
Okay.
That's receiving that text input from the user.
Thanks.
Adam, thank you very much. Really, really useful. Adam's a multiple time presenter here, so thank you. And Adam, while you put this stuff in the
one
link,
quick last question, is there time?
yeah, who's that, Tim?
This is Tim.
Go
So
ahead,
I'm still a little confused about Pinecone. Does ChatGPT know how to use Pinecone and know how to use the vector math in it?
So that's what LangChain enables. It allows
Okay.
you to communicate with the vector database and GPT.
Okay, thanks.
That's the code that allows those connections to happen.
Got it.
Yuri, did you have a quick question? Or Art, anyone
No,
else?
sorry, I was just clapping.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, good. Well, Adam, thank you for putting that stuff in. Everyone, thanks for continuing to make this a great
I'll
thing.
quickly throw all those links in the chat so we don't lose them too.
That'd be great. And then last, does anybody new who hasn't spoken want to share a great use case or a study or something they learned?
Hi, Paul. I don't have anything to share, but I do have a question for the person who presented. I was just wondering, how confidential is this information? If I had confidential information and if I load it to LangChain and connect it with ChatGPT, how, if it's proprietary information, how does that work?
It's just like you're uploading it to any other third-party provider. I wouldn't treat it any differently. You're putting it on someone else's website or in their database. You're still passing that data and interactions to GPT. I was actually just chatting with my the day job I have here in Australia with our CTO the other day about his discussions with legal, and his advice in terms of the guidance he wants them to write up right now is to say, treat this like any other information, right? That's the safest guideline to give at this point. Don't treat it like anything else. So if you wouldn't take that information and put it up on Facebook, like you wouldn't put it in a Gmail, don't be giving it to GPT.
But what about the switch? Because I know in 4, you have a default where you can say, don't use my data for training.
Don't use it for training, but you're still sending it.
Yeah.
Someone could be sniffing the wire. There's all sorts of cybersecurity implications, above and beyond just whether or not it's training on that information.
True.
Still taking information and sending it outside of your organization.
And having been on the vendor side for 20 years, you're still trusting an organization. We've got your data. It's sitting in a data. We're not training. We're just actually checking for errors. So we're using your code for error checking, not training. And legal said we're allowed to do that. And, it goes on and on. So it is, I think it's risk reward. But thank you everyone for another great session. Please keep spreading the word, and great the feedback. Adam and Lucinda, fantastic. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone.